Hi, this week's video blog is thinking specifically about special needs children at home or at school in the coming weeks. So firstly, if your child is at home and they don't have any special needs, let's use this as a chance to do that alternate curriculum. You know, learning as fun, not as a timetabled, regimented regime, but something, maybe doing cooking, doing some art, doing some music, just finding fun in that non-specific, I'm doing my maths, I'm doing my English, I'm doing my geography, I'm doing my history way. This is a chance to actually really embrace education and learning and making it fun. So that's the first thing to say. However, for those with special needs, this could be a really difficult time, whether they are on an EHCP and in school or whether they're at home. Now, you may be thinking, oh, you know, special needs children, they'll all be in school. Not true. A lot of children either don't quite meet the requirements for an EHCP, Education, Health and Care Plan, or just haven't yet been granted one, or the parents or school haven't sought one because they were actually managing fine in normal times. These aren't normal times. The other reason for what I'm saying isn't just for people at home looking after the children who couldn't go in, but also the teachers in school looking after these children who wouldn't necessarily usually be working with predominantly special needs children. So it's important to think about what will help them. So whilst I've said that for the children who don't have special needs, yeah, go off plan, go off piste, enjoy it, have lots of fun. For some of our children, especially those on the autistic spectrum or who have ADHD, the structure is actually what they need, and they're going to be feeling very confused, very vulnerable and scared because that's just been sort of swept, sort of pulled away from underneath them. So for those children, one thing I would suggest, and this goes back to my own children having been homeschooled by my parents for 7 months while we were in the process of moving house. My youngest two were homeschooled, and my parents very sensibly gave the home education a name. They called it U1A, University of the First Age. They gave it a school uniform and a hat because they were going to include trips. But what they did is they had a logo for it as well, which they put on the uniform for when they were on trips. But it meant they structured the day so there was home time and school time, so they didn't blur that, which they found quite important because my children were quite young at the time. What I would recommend for those on the spectrum would be to discuss with the children what you want to call the school, give it a name. Make a logo. That can be one of your first activities, to design that together, and then maybe have something that's put up, I don't know, on the fridge with a fridge magnet or somewhere, pinboard, whatever, that sort of during the time, the hours you have set, you've agreed as being the school time, that's up there, so you know this is just normal home. It could be really confusing for a child at home to be schooled at home if they're not used to that. So to have something up that says this is school time now could be very helpful. Likewise in school, where your timetable is going to be very different with the lesser number of children and the different members of staff, a visual timetable would be really helpful for the children who are struggling. Even if you don't, you know, you're making it up as you go along to some extent and things might change, some visual prompt. So next we'll be doing, you know, this is now, this is next, and now next board would be really helpful for these children, so they've got some sense of structure. So that can be put up with blue tack on the whiteboard, however you want to do it, but that structure could be incredibly important. And then maybe have some sort of rotational activities, but planning that time together. So your first school day at home could be, how are we going to spend this time? Now for a child on the spectrum, too many questions could be overwhelming, so it might be a choice of two things. Do you want to do cooking, or do you want to do some reading? Do you want to do maths, or do you want to do some experiments? Think about all those wonderful kitchen science experiments that you can do. Again, so many resources online. I've been tweeting different resources that as I've been hearing about them. Using the online resources, the YouTube guides, there's loads of them out there, is good because your child will get some different voices during the day. So they'll get that sense of not just being alone. Using things like Zoom, so you can have a sort of conference, video, virtual classroom, I don't know what you want to call it, but so that your child isn't alone, they've got other children to interact with. Setting that up, maybe, WhatsApp groups, you can do some video messaging. Even, you don't have to have things like Zoom, just your smartphone and WhatsApp and some friends, and you can video chat with each other. Things that make it less isolating when you're at home. This is as important for the children as it is, we've got loads of things about grown-ups and self-isolating, but the children, even, we think of people on the spectrum not necessarily wanting all the social stuff, but this is a very good way of social interaction that they will need, and it's a safe way of doing it. So enjoying it, but keeping some sense of structure is really important for those with needs. It's the opportunity for those, especially on the spectrum or ADHD, where they quite often have a very focused area of interest. They can go deep, they can really go into that area. And one project that's maybe looking at dinosaurs or outer space or whatever can actually incorporate other subject areas, so you don't have to worry, oh, they won't be getting this, they won't be getting that. The other thing is, everyone's in a unique position. The national curriculum is no longer what we need to adhere to, because everybody won't at home have copies of the national curriculum, let's stick to it rigidly. This is a chance to be flexible in the learning, do the learning that will interest and engage our children so that they are enthused by the idea of learning. Learning can become fun again. Like when I started teaching, I could teach pretty much what I wanted. Obviously there were parameters, there were boundaries and all the rest of it, but it was exciting. You could take a topic that interested the children and go with it, run with it. This is a chance to do that. For our special needs children, let's do it in a way that fits their learning abilities, their learning styles. We can go at their pace. We don't have to think, oh, we've got to try and get this finished. It doesn't matter. If the maths happens to be fractions, then it doesn't have to be dry and looking at numbers on page. It can be taking things they're interested in and physically dividing them up into the fractions, showing them what the fractions are. If with the maths, making food together, recipes, there's a lot of maths involved in recipes, and there's a lot of ratio and proportion in recipes, all sorts of things that you could do with the recipes. There's science in recipes. Look at how this and this, put them together in the oven, add heat to it, look what happens. They combine, they stick together, they bind in a different way. The whole structure of it is different. Again, going online, there are so many kitchen science activities that can be done. Play with texture. If you've got a garden, not just gardening, but create a mud kitchen. There is fun to be had out there, and it can be done according to not only the needs of the children, but their interests, their wants, what they would like to be doing with the time. Let's make this time, instead of being a problem, let's make it an opportunity. Let's bring in that creativity, let's bring in the arts, let's bring in the outdoors in a way that is often constrained within school. Let's make the most of it. If you're in school, you've then got much larger areas to play with for the number of children that you have, which means you can do all sorts of things using rooms that you wouldn't necessarily normally go to. You may be an English teacher, but you've got access to the art room. You can go outdoors in the grounds and do things that you might not be able to do in the normal school day. Make the most of it, make it fun, and please, for those of our children who desperately need that structure, don't cope well with change, let's give them some form of structure, advance warnings, knowledge, a physical, tangible, visual representation of what they're going to do, what they're doing next, what the order of their day is. And for those without those special needs, let's get rid of those boundaries, let's enjoy, let's break through and get to that deep learning that's not about data, not about statistics, not about league tables, not about having to fit in, but about engaging with children and making learning totally fun again. Thank you.